heard you know about the Elder Scrolls.
Elder Scrolls, indeed.
So, where's the scroll?
Here.
A madman? Why, of course he is. Who else would have lived in here? You want to discuss something with me?
Tell me more, Tamriel.
I'll tell you what I know.
Didn't we ask that already? Tell me more about this Archon Tamriel you respect so much.
If it weren't for her effort, the Dominion would have been much less tolerant to outsiders.
Mm-hmm. Is she pretty?
Well, quite, I suppose. She's rather young by elven politician standards.
Uh-huh.
Though, from what I've heard, Archon Tamriel has a secret lover. No one knows who that is.
Wait, was that it? That was it?
You want to discuss something with me?
Tamriel.
I'll tell you what I know.
More about Archon Tamriel.
If it weren't for her effort, the Dominion would have been much less tolerant to outsiders.
Do you know her background?
I suppose so. She's not as mysterious as the High Archon.
Where did she come from?
She was born in Cloudrest, 17 years after the establishment of the Third Dominion. Her mother was a Cadra in Alanor, and her father was a commander of the rebellion in the war. Back then, Alanor had already partially recovered from the damage caused by the Great Starvation, and the monarchists.
I have no idea what you're talking
But
about.
the Altmer's hatred towards the Empire and its citizens was still very intense. After all, the Empire was responsible for their sufferings. Being a veteran himself, who had witnessed years of wars, sufferings, sorrow and darkness, Archon Tamriel's father thought all wars should end. Archon Tamriel's mother did not share the same view. She was deeply influenced by the xenophobia within the Dominion's society back then. Eventually, she divorced Archon Tamriel's father and remarried to an archmage in Lilandril. The archmage was famous, influential, powerful, and charismatic, pretty much more attractive than the father of her daughter. His name was Shezarrine.
Uh-huh. That slut! You can divorce in the Dominion? Well, I guess yes, as long as you remarry a superiorly bred Mer. Not Tamriel and her father were in deep sorrow. So that's why Tamriel hates Shezarrine so much for stealing her mother?
I don't know if Archon Tamriel actually hates Shezarrine for that. From what I know, she has never talked about her mother publicly. Either it affects her deeply, or she basically doesn't care.
Well, if it affects her deeply, then this two opposing faction is basically just, you stole my mom, now I hate you. No doubt Tamriel and her father were in deep sorrow for that.
I don't know about Archon Tamriel, but her father didn't show much emotion about that. Perhaps he had already seen it coming from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. You can divorce in the Dominion?
Yes. If I remember correctly, it was made legal in 4E95.
Interesting. I see no point in saving a lost cause such as a broken marriage.
True. Forcing yourself to stay in a broken relationship, it would only add pain to both sides, while the marriage itself cannot be saved after all. In that case, why not make it over? Give it a quick, painless death.
By poisoning your husband. Well, why would it be called stealing?
As much as I despise Shezarrine, I can't say it's all his fault.
Yeah, it's not.
Archon Tamriel's father agreed with the divorce after all.
There's always two to that. But he's not really a slut. Go on.
Of course.
What happened after Tamriel lost her mother?
She grew up healthily. With her father's guidance and her own talent, she had become a capable mage at young age. At the age of 61, which is very young in Elven standard, she became an Archmage of Alanor. Mostly, none in Alanor would even think about ascending to Archmageship without 100 years of experience. She's a rarity among the rarest.
Isn't she just
By the beginning
greatest?
of 4E's 2nd century, Alanor had already become more open-minded and advanced, yet xenophobia remained dominant in the Dominion.
Archon Thindrell, as an Archmage of the High University, had taught what she believed is good to her students, hoping to change the Dominion's future.
The students did buy her ideas, but them alone could not change anything. At least, not until they run the society in their parents' stead. When she was 73, she was proposed to be the next headmistress of the High University, despite she didn't share most Archmages' political views.
That doesn't make sense. Why would a society that is all about superiority propose someone like that as an... whatever. Why would she be proposed if she didn't stand with the others?
First, she's a social woman. A lot of Archmages were friends with her, except perhaps the staunchest supremacists.
Which is more than
Second,
half of...
politics isn't
probably
everything
all of
that the
Alinor.
Dominion is about.
Just
Oh,
because her
really?
political view is different from the others, doesn't necessarily mean she's their enemy. Besides,
I
the
don't
High
know.
University isn't a political institution to start with. Her knowledge, personality and ability were far greater concerns. Third, she did contribute tremendously to the development of the Dominion's level of magic, bringing glory to the High
in the
University
Elder
of Alanor.
Scrolls Online...
Therefore, even if
when you
she
go
wasn't
with the
auto-selected to
Altmer,
be
or
the
when-
new headmistress,
Shut up, I'm
she
talking.
wouldn't be excluded
When you
from
do
the
with
list.
the Altmer faction, you get kind of a quest to go to the university or whatever there. And there they treat, like, wood elves or just anything that isn't an Altmer like crap. Wouldn't Sindarin have intervened the process of the headmaster selection?
How? With his influence in the army?
But I thought he
Supremacists
was...
have never had much influence in educational institutions outside Lilandra.
Don't give
There's
me that
nothing solid
bullshit.
Sindarin could do.
The
Besides, he'd want to do his
or
late
the
wife one
Altmo-
last favour.
They feed off of supremacy. You can't tell me that it's only in the army or in politics and that doesn't seep into... It's a mentality. It has nothing to do with politics. You can't tell me that doesn't seep into college and whatever the heck. What about Sindarin?
He was elected to be the Archon of Might 19 years before this headmaster selection, so it's safe to conclude that he had maintained his power well.
How is headmaster or headmistress of the High University selected?
The Archmages would propose some among themselves to be the candidates, and give their names to the High Archon. After that, the High Archon would select one on the name list to be the next headmaster or headmistress. Whoever on the name list she first summons after the name submission would automatically gain that honor.
Just in case she mistakenly summons the wrong person, what then?
What makes you think I'd know?
Well, you seem to know everything. No in quotation marks. What happens if every Archmage proposes themselves?
Then the High Archon would skip the proposition part.
What if an Archmage demands an audience with the High Archon to be summoned?
There's no such thing as an audience with the High Archon.
And? Continue? Why is that? The High Archon shouldn't have that kind of...
The High University is beyond a simple educational institution. Almost all future cadres and even Archons come from there. You understand the necessity to ensure it would go in the right direction, so that it won't create another Mankar Cameron, right?
Did she become the headmistress as she wished?
She was summoned by the High Archon 2 minutes after every Archmage submitted their candidates' names. But after she returned, she didn't even greet her supporters. Instead, she packed her belongings and headed to elsewhere, without leaving a word. I suspected it was a secret order from the High Archon that must be fulfilled by the future headmaster of the Dominion's highest institute. Archon Thindral returned after 2 months, with a 14-year-old Khajiit boy. Loderi.
He is not her bastard boy. That's not possible. It's always in Elder Scrolls land, whatever comes out of that is always the race of the mother.
No, I doubt the possibility. Everyone in his old village witnessed his mother's giving birth to him.
Yeah, and it
so
it
Loderi
wouldn't be
told me.
possible. 2 minutes after submission, are you kidding?
Usually it'd take days for her to decide the next leaders of the High University. But it was real fast that time.
And also, I think
Perhaps the High
elves
Archon wanted to make a change to
are
the
not
Dominion by making the right people
that
powerful.
fertile?
Or
Question
perhaps she
mark?
had some other plans.
Or at least not as
It's
fertile
the
as
High
humans.
Archon, after
Humans in
all.
the Elder Scrolls
Who'd
land
ever
are
know what's in her
constantly
mind?
fertile. Elves are kind of only fertile to stop their race from dying out or something like that. Why would she bring Loderi to Alinor?
Well, I honestly don't know. Even Loderi himself is curious about that. But Archon Thindral never actually told him. All I know is that Loderi stole some books in Elsewhere, and was charged by Sindarin's men of different sorts of crimes. Archon Thindral saved him, and persuaded his family to allow him to study in Alinor. Why him specifically? Hell if I know.
So she returned to Alinor with Loderi. What next?
It was only a year before the headmaster's retirement. Loderi enrolled into the High University and became one of the handful of Khajiits in there.
Loderi wasn't quite good with magic in the beginning, but he worked it out in the end, with the help of his classmates and Archon Thindral.
When the headmaster finally retired, Archon Thindral took his place as the High University of Alinor's new headmistress.
Go on.
Of course.
Oh god. How was she elected to be an Archon?
As she became the headmistress, she worked actively to spread her ideology to the students inside the High University. While old Mary are generally condescending towards other races, they usually mean no harm. The younger old Mary accepted her idea in no time.
No.
Archon
Yeah, maybe
Thindral's
the
influence
younger
had spread among the
ones,
young
but-
elites in Alinor, and sometimes even their families.
Yeah. Yeah.
Later.
Arsarion, the Archon of Wisdom, decided to retire due to health issues after decades of service.
No.
With the position emptied, some politicians started their campaigns to run for it. Archon Thindral was one of them.
Well, they're kids of service, of course. They're elves. Why not?
Yes, the election is held every 50 years, unless the position is emptied. Besides, Arsarion didn't actually finish his term in office.
What had Arsarion done when he was in office?
His policies improved the agriculture of Elsewhere and Valenwood. He also industrialized some rural area of Valenwood. He also maintained a good relationship with Sindarin, even though he wasn't a supremacist. One could say it was a golden age for the Dominion.
Sure.
Perhaps that's why the High Archon grew bold enough to start the Great War.
Why did Arsarion retire?
He suffered from declining health. Some old wounds that the Civil War has left on him, I guess.
How did Thindra win?
Honestly, it was pretty apparent that the High Archon favored her. The other candidates were just there for the show. One can say it's the ugly side of the Dominion's politics, that the High Archon basically dictates everything.
Yeah.
But for all it's worth, I'm glad that she preferred Archon Thindral.
Did Sindarin do anything to affect the result?
No, at least not publicly. He just watched the election without taking action to affect it. It makes sense. Violently affecting the election would earn him nothing but the High Archon and the people's wrath.
Go on.
Of course.
Feed me with the bullshit. So she won and became Archon, and then...
Archon Thindrel dropped down her position as the headmistress of the High University and began to fully dedicate her time to politics. She knew Sindarin would be a threat to the ideological reform of the Dominion, and he must be removed from the position of power. So, she began working with her friends, utilizing her power and influence to eradicate Sindarin's influence in Elsewhere. Elsewhere was almost Sindarin's backyard, if you ask me. His supremacists occupied almost every significant position in Elswere's government.
Every single anything.
Being gripped by Sindarin,
armor.
the native Khajiits had basically no say in their own affairs. Many
Of
Khajiits were
course
forced to
not.
leave their homeland.
They want to get rid
transform
of
the
them.
Dominion
They
into
want
a
to wipe out
cosmopolitan
all of
nation,
humanity,
and to free
all
the Khajiits
of
from the
beast
supremacists.
races,
Sindarin must be
possibly
forced
the
out
other
of
elves
Elsewhere.
too when they're done with wiping out
Through
humans.
politics and coups, Archon Thindrel successfully crumbled the supremacists' influence in Elsewhere, thus gained control in the province.
I don't see Elsewhere very much improved from what I've feared.
Did you hear that from the Khajiit caravans?
Yes?
I guess it's because they came to Skyrim before Archon Thindrel cast Sindarin out of Elsewhere. The Khajiits are
Archon
living with
Thindrel
dignity
is
and
just
wealth
the
in Elsewhere
greatest,
now.
isn't she?
I
Just
observed it, and I can assure you.
walking around like freaking Oprah, giving just shit to everyone. She's a great politician.
I thank you for her.
Ah, God, don't. I'm glad you're closer to me now. Just don't. I hate you. You're goddamn. Nothing to say about the Elder Scroll, really? I thought you would have all sorts
lead,
of things
I'll
to
follow.
say, like, oh my god, give me that immediately so I can give it to the Dominion.
When the top
Transcribe
level
the
was built,
lexicon.
the blood of Altmer, Bosmer, Dunmer, Falmer, and Orsimer. The elves still living provide the key.
Ah, so we're going on a slaughter of elves?
Yes!
Let's see where that'll lead us.
Also, who says we have to slaughter them? We just need their blood. Nothing more, nothing less. Hi, tentacle guy.
Come closer, bask in my presence.
I will never join you, vile demon.
Be warned, many have thought as you do. I have broken them all. You shall not evade me forever.
I brought
Level
all the
was
blood you
built,
require.
I can almost hear them. I feel their life energy. Come, I will make the mixture.
Come, my champion.
I'm not your champion.
Your free will is an illusion.
So this mad old fellow was killed by his own hunger for knowledge. How entirely expected of Hermaeus Mora.
Yep, I'm surprised you have nothing to say about Ogma Infinium.
Lead on.
Just forcing me to hand it over to the Dominion or some shit like that, you know?
You have it. The Kell, the Elder Scroll. Do not delay. Alduin will be coming. He cannot miss the signs.
You are banished!
It worked. You did it.
Yes, the World Eater is gone. May the spirits have mercy on our souls.
Alduin is here.
My belly is full of the souls of your fellow mortals, Dovahkiin.
Shut up.
Die now, and await your fate in Southern
Elves don't go to Sovngarde, son of a bitch.
Jur, Zafrul!
Tremble.
Too late, Alduin.
Do it now! Shout Alduin down to the earth!
Yes!
We will end him once and for all!
Sulaki Mulak, Parthrlax.
For Tamriel! For the existence of everything!
Oh, for the High Archon and the Dominion!
Unshrat Hokoran, never again.
Shit, I forgot to shout
Not
again.
World Eater.
Just hold still for a minute, please.
Jur, Zafrul!
He is not immortal, you idiot.
Take cover!
Where are you? Yeah, he's definitely taking cover. Come on, get down, you bitch.
Jur, Zafrul!
You may have picked up the weapons of my ancient foes, but you are
Shall
not
not end
their
this world,
equal.
World Eater. Alduin has been grounded. Strike with all our strength. Put you down 1,000 more times if I had to.
Maze Mul Dovahkiin, you have become strong. But I am Alduin, firstborn of Akatosh, Malagi Zoklat. I cannot be slain here by you or anyone else. You cannot prevail against me. I will outlast you, mortal.
That bastard! Coward! I expected more courage from a
But
dragon
he's
god.
still here!
We have to hunt him down. If he regains his full strength, it'll take a much greater sacrifice to truly kill him.
Hey, buddy. You look a little
Lot
rough.
Kongrach. You truly have the voice of a Dova. Alduin's allies will think twice after this victory.
Yep. I need to find where Alduin went.
Yes, one of his allies could tell us. Perhaps the Hafkasayun, the palace in Whiterun, Dragon's Reach. It was originally built to house a captive Dova.
Tell me more, Thalmor.
I'll tell you what I know.
Dominion.
It's not as dark as the Imperials would describe, and not as bright as the Aldmeri citizens tend to believe.
How was the Dominion established?
That'd trace back to the Oblivion Crisis. Briefly, the last Altmer monarch was a corrupt and ignorant ruler. He cared nothing about his people, but his luxurious lifestyle and puppet master. So the Thalmor became a more preferable choice to the people, and together they've overthrown the monarchy of Alinor. Thus began the Dominion. If you want the whole of it, it might take an hour or more.
Okay,
you still
no,
interested?
I don't. Not really. Can it be shorter?
No, it can't.
Okay. So as long as it isn't as dumb as Ingvi's High Rock story.
Well, I don't know, but I'll proceed then. The Oblivion Crisis, as you might have imagined, was an unwanted surprise to everyone. It caused significant casualties to the entire continent. The Somerset Isle suffered significant casualties from the event. Over a quarter of its population was wiped out by Daedra. No one was prepared when the first gate to Oblivion was opened beneath Cloudrest. Most were first shocked, others overwhelmed by fear, but quickly they all gathered at the castle of Cloudrest, their only hope for survival. The civilians ran to the castle, which was, at the moment, the site of a banquet for the nobles and royalties from all parts of the Isle.
With all haste, the guards reported to the King of Cloudrest of what they had witnessed from the castle wall. Knowing that a swarming horde of Daedra awaited outside, seeking to slaughter everyone they see, the king ordered the castle sealed. One gate to separate safety and certain death. The defenseless were torn to pieces, perished with the hope that they would be offered sanctuary. But in no more than a day, even the castle gate was breached, and every king, queen, lord and lady in the banquet became Daedrath's dinner.
What happened to the kings and queens that weren't in the banquet?
They were either killed by Daedra or forced to abdicate their authority and power to the king in Alinor. Alinor was pretty much the safest city on the Somerset Isle then. Logically, those kings and queens would rather stay inside the castle of Alinor as lesser nobles than to perish with their crowns.
Go on.
Of course.
What happened after the Oblivion Crisis broke out on Somerset Isles?
Without the Empire's aid, the soldiers in Alinor were barely enough to safeguard Alinor's city and the king's luxurious palace. The common people, they were never on his list of protection. He just let them rot, ripped apart by Mehrunes Dagon's minions.
Because the Empire had their own shit to deal
While the
with
king
in their own
and his
country.
nobles were still holding their profligate parties inside the royal palace, under the protection of the soldiers. Outside the palace, it became the Dramora's paradise and hunting ground. Men killed, children eaten, towns blazed. The atrocities of Mehrunes Dagon were allowed to happen.
And the guards of the royal palace did nothing to protect the people?
They couldn't.
Why?
An oath was sworn that
Fuck
they would serve
oaths.
aside the monarch of Alinor from then to beyond.
Fuck the oath.
They must not leave the palace to save the villages and cities, because their king
Who
ordered them
cares
so.
when one guy says don't do
The
that?
soldiers weren't mindless. They felt ashamed for what they couldn't do, for not protecting those who were truly worth and needed
For
their
what
protection.
they couldn't do, they could do that. Just because
Yet,
one guy
as long
says,
as they would honor their vow,
no, you're not allowed to
nothing
do that.
could be done by them. From the palace's
That's
terraces,
stupid.
the guards could only watch villages burn.
Stupid. They could
Until
have done
one day,
something.
the Justicar sneaked into the palace dungeon and gave a speech that would change the history of Alinor, and possibly Tamriel.
The Justicia, who's that?
The title that the High Archon used before she established the Third Dominion.
Mm-hmm.
She was the leader of the Thalmor at that time already, but the party was not as powerful as it is today.
Perhaps you can... No, continue.
Suit yourself.
Yo, yeah.
What is it that you need?
I need your help. I need to drive a dragon in your palace.
No.
What if you didn't have to worry about an enemy attack?
If the Greybeards were willing to host a peace council,
Leave it to me. I'll talk to Anya about hosting a peace council.
I, Dragonborn, maybe you can stop the dragons and this war into the bargain.